Let me tell you where leadership truly begins. It does not begin with a title. It does not begin with a corner office. It does not begin when someone finally calls you boss. Leadership begins the moment you stop asking, "What am I supposed to do?" and start asking, "What needs to be done?" That is a completely different way of thinking. Most people live their lives waiting for instructions, waiting for direction, waiting for clarity. They show up in the morning and say, "Tell me my tasks," and once those tasks are completed, they feel satisfied. But leadership doesn't operate on task completion. Leadership operates on responsibility. A worker sees the assignment. A leader sees the outcome. If a worker is told to sweep the floor, he sweeps the floor. If a leader walks into the room and sees the floor is dirty, he doesn't wait for someone to assign the broom. He picks it up. Why? Because his mind is wired differently. He is not protecting his job description. He is protecting the result, and here is what is fascinating. Responsibility is rarely given to those who avoid it. It is attracted to those who assume it. You don't become a leader by demanding authority. You become a leader by demonstrating ownership. When something goes wrong, the worker asks, "Who is responsible for this?" The leader asks, "How can I fix this?" That small shift changes everything. Because the moment you begin to think in terms of ownership, you stop being replaceable. Let me give you something to consider. You don't get paid for the hour. You get paid for the value you bring to the hour. Two people can stand in the same room for 8 hours. One brings ideas, initiative, energy, solutions. The other brings compliance. Guess which one becomes indispensable? Leadership thinking says, if this project succeeds, I am responsible. If it fails, I am responsible. That is a heavy statement. Most people don't want that weight. They want security without accountability, but responsibility is the price of growth. If you want to earn more, you must carry more. Think about your current role. Are you only doing what is required? Or are you thinking about how to improve the system? Are you looking for ways to make things better, faster, smoother? Leaders are obsessed with improvement. Workers are satisfied with completion. Completion keeps you employed. Improvement makes you valuable. Now here is the deeper truth. Responsibility is not something you turn on at work and turn off at home. It becomes part of your character. You begin to take responsibility for your learning, responsibility for your attitude, responsibility for your growth. You stop blaming the economy, your boss, your coworkers, your background. Because leaders understand something powerful. Excuses are expensive. Blame delays progress. Ownership accelerates it. When you take responsibility, you gain control. When you blame, you surrender control, and leaders never surrender control over their future. You might say, "But I'm not in charge." That's fine. Leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking charge. There is a difference. One is a title. The other is a mindset. You can start today. You can walk into your workplace tomorrow and decide, from this moment forward, I will think beyond my assignment. I will think about the outcome. I will think about the company. I will think about the team. That decision alone separates you from the crowd. And here is what inevitably happens. People begin to notice. Not because you are trying to impress them, but because responsibility radiates. It changes how you speak. It changes how you act. It changes the standards you hold yourself to. Leaders hold themselves to a higher standard than anyone else ever could. They don't need supervision to perform well. They supervise themselves. They don't need reminders to care. They care automatically. Why? Because they see themselves as stakeholders, not spectators. If you only see yourself as an employee, you will perform like one. If you see yourself as a builder, an architect of results, you will behave differently. Responsibility expands your capacity. Each time you accept a little more, you grow a little stronger, and growth is what makes leadership possible. Don't wait for someone to recognize your potential. Reveal it through responsibility. Don't ask for a bigger opportunity. Become bigger than the opportunity you have, because in the end, the difference between a worker and a leader is simple. A worker waits to be told what to do. A leader decides what must be done and takes responsibility for making it happen. Let's talk about something that changes the entire trajectory of a person's life: the difference between focusing on time and focusing on value. Most people are trained from the beginning to think in hours. How long did you work? How many hours did you put in? Did you complete your shift? And so they build their identity around time. They trade it, they measure it, they protect it. But leaders understand something that most people never pause long enough to consider. Time alone does not create success. Value does. You can work 8 hours and create very little, or you can work 8 hours and create something extraordinary. The clock does not determine your future. Contribution does. A worker says, I put in my time. A leader says, did I increase my value? That is a completely different question. If you only focus on time, you will always feel limited. There are only 24 hours in a day, but if you focus on value, your potential becomes unlimited. Because value can expand, skills can expand, knowledge can expand, character can expand, and when you expand, your income, your opportunities, and your influence expand with you. Here is the principle: income rarely exceeds personal development for long. If you want more on the outside, you must become more on the inside. Some people want a raise without growth. They want promotion without preparation. They want recognition without refinement. But life doesn't reward need, it rewards value. If you become twice as valuable, you will not need to demand twice the pay. The marketplace has a way of responding to those who increase their capacity. Think about it this way. If you are the same person this year as you were last year, with the same skills, the same mindset, the same discipline, why should your results change? Improvement is not accidental, it is intentional. Leaders are students. They are always learning. They read. They observe. They ask questions. They invest in themselves. While others are counting the minutes until the weekend, leaders are counting the lessons they can apply to move forward. A worker might say, I've been here for 5 years, but the real question is, have you grown for 5 years? Or have you repeated 1 year 5 times? Growth is the multiplier. If you spend your time only doing what you already know, your value remains fixed. But when you stretch, when you take on new challenges, when you acquire new skills, you increase what you bring to the table. And when what you bring increases, so does what you receive. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control every company decision. But you can control your level of development. That is powerful, because once you understand that your growth is in your hands, you stop feeling trapped. Leaders do not ask, how can I get more money? They ask, how can I become more valuable? There is dignity in labor, yes. But there is power in improvement. Imagine 2 employees starting at the same position. One finishes the day and goes home to escape. The other finishes the day and spends 30 minutes reading something that sharpens his thinking. After a year, that difference compounds. After 5 years, it becomes dramatic. After 10 years, it becomes undeniable. Value compounds quietly. You don't see dramatic change overnight, but small, daily disciplines create extraordinary outcomes. 10 pages a day becomes dozens of books a year. One new skill every few months becomes a rare combination of abilities. Leaders understand the long game of value, and here is something critical. Value is not just technical skill. It is attitude, it is reliability, it is communication, it is the ability to solve problems without drama. Those qualities make you indispensable. Anyone can show up, not everyone can elevate. When you focus only on time, you become concerned with fairness. I worked longer than him. I've been here longer than her. But leadership thinking shifts from fairness to effectiveness. It says, who can create the greatest impact? Because impact determines influence, and influence is what leadership is built on. If you want to think like a leader, stop measuring your day by how long you worked. Measure it by how much you improved. Ask yourself each night, did I grow today? Did I learn something? Did I sharpen my skills? Did I handle challenges with maturity? Those questions build a different future. Work on your job, yes, be excellent in your responsibilities, but work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because your job can disappear, your company can change, the economy can shift, but what you have become stays with you. That is security. When you become valuable enough, opportunities begin to chase you. Doors open that once seemed locked. People seek your input. Your presence carries weight, not because you demanded it, but because you developed it. So do not let your life be defined by the hours you clock. Let it be defined by the value you create. Let growth become your obsession. Let improvement become your habit. And when you focus on becoming more, you will never have to worry about earning more. Because value, in the end, determines everything. There is another distinction that separates leaders from workers, and it shows up in moments of pressure more than anywhere else. It shows up when a choice must be made. Workers wait for decisions, leaders make them. Indecision is one of the quietest thieves of potential. It doesn't shout, it doesn't announce itself. It simply delays, and delay, repeated often enough, becomes a habit. Many people spend their lives waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect clarity, the perfect guarantee. But leadership is not built on guarantees. It is built on courage. A worker says, "Tell me what to do, and I'll do it." A leader says, "Here is what we're going to do." That difference may sound small, but it changes everything. Now, let's be clear. Leadership is not recklessness. It is not impulsiveness. It is not ignoring wisdom. Leaders gather information. They ask questions. They seek counsel. But once they have enough information to move, they move. They understand that perfect certainty is rarely available. If you wait until you are 100% sure, you will wait forever. Every meaningful step in life involves some risk. Starting the business, changing the career, having the difficult conversation, investing in yourself. There is always a moment when you must decide without knowing every outcome, and that moment is where leaders are formed. Workers often look upward for permission, leaders look inward for conviction. When something goes wrong in an organization, watch closely. Workers look around the room hoping someone else will step in. Leaders step forward. They don't say, "Whose fault is this?" They say, "Here's what we're going to do next." That is powerful. Because progress does not require perfection, it requires direction, and direction only comes from decision. Some people fear making the wrong choice. They think a wrong decision will ruin everything. But what ruins more lives than wrong decisions is no decisions. A wrong decision gives you feedback. No decision gives you stagnation. Mistakes are tuition. They are part of the learning process. Leaders understand that growth is rarely graceful. There will be missteps. There will be adjustments. But movement creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. Confidence is not something you wait to feel before you act. It is something you build by acting. Every time you decide, you strengthen your ability to decide again. You begin to trust your judgment. You begin to sharpen your instincts, and over time, what once felt intimidating becomes natural. Now here is something important. Decision-making is not only about big, dramatic choices. It is about daily discipline. Deciding to wake up earlier, deciding to read instead of scroll, deciding to prepare instead of procrastinate. Those small decisions shape character, and character shapes destiny. If you avoid small decisions, you will struggle with large ones. But if you practice decisiveness in the little things, you will develop strength for the greater responsibilities that come your way. Leaders do not blame circumstances for their hesitation. They take ownership of their direction. They understand that if they do not design their future, someone else will assign it. And that is not leadership, that is drifting. You cannot drift your way to greatness. You cannot drift your way to influence. You must choose. Perhaps the most powerful word in leadership is this: decide. Decide to improve. Decide to take responsibility. Decide to develop your value. Decide to move forward even when the path is not perfectly clear. The world respects movement. Opportunities respond to action. People follow clarity. When you speak with decisiveness, people listen differently. When you act with conviction, people respond differently, not because you are louder, but because you are certain. Certainty is magnetic, but remember this: certainty does not mean arrogance. Leaders remain teachable. If new information proves a better path, they adjust. Decision does not mean stubbornness, it means direction. There is strength in saying, "This is the way forward." There is maturity in saying, "I was wrong, here is the better way." Both require courage. Both require responsibility. The greatest danger is not choosing the wrong road. The greatest danger is standing at the crossroads your entire life. So if you want to think like a leader, stop waiting for someone to authorize your progress. Stop postponing action until fear disappears. Fear rarely disappears before action. It fades after. Gather what you need to know. Seek wisdom. Weigh your options. And then decide, because in the end, your life will not be defined by the chances you are given. It will be defined by the decisions you made. There is one more shift that must take place if you truly want to think like a leader and not simply operate like a worker. It is the shift from short-term thinking to long-term vision. Most people are consumed by the immediate. They think about Friday. They think about the next paycheck. They think about comfort today. And there is nothing wrong with caring about today, but if today is all you ever see, you will sacrifice tomorrow without even realizing it. Workers think about relief. Leaders think about results. A worker asks, "What do I get now?" A leader asks, "What am I building?" That question changes your behavior instantly. When you think long-term, you begin to see your actions differently. That extra hour of study is no longer a burden, it is an investment. That difficult conversation is no longer uncomfortable, it is necessary. That discipline today is no longer restrictive, it is strategic. Short-term thinking seeks comfort. Long-term thinking seeks growth. Comfort is seductive. It whispers, "You deserve a break. You've done enough. Relax." And sometimes rest is appropriate. But when comfort becomes a lifestyle, progress slows. Leaders understand that what feels good now is not always what builds greatness later. If you plant corn today, you do not harvest tomorrow. There is a season between planting and reaping. And in that season, you must trust the process. Leadership requires patience. It requires vision beyond what you can immediately see. Think about where you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. The person you will become then is shaped by the habits you practice now. The books you read, the skills you sharpen, the relationships you cultivate, the discipline you embrace. Time will pass whether you prepare or not. The difference is whether you arrive at the future equipped or unprepared. Leaders are architects of their future. They design it intentionally. They do not simply react to circumstances. They anticipate, they plan, they ask, "If I continue this pattern, where will it lead me?" That is a powerful question. If you continue your current habits for the next 5 years, will you be proud of the result? If not, leadership thinking demands adjustment now, not later. Short-term thinking says it's just one day. Long-term thinking says every day counts, because every day is a vote for the person you are becoming. Workers often measure success by immediate reward. Leaders measure success by sustainable progress. They are willing to delay gratification, They are willing to say no today so they can say yes to something greater tomorrow. This is not always easy. In fact, it rarely is. Long-term vision requires sacrifice. It requires saying no to distractions. It requires discipline when no one is watching. It requires faith when results are not immediate. But here is the remarkable thing: small, consistent actions compounded over time create extraordinary outcomes. You don't need dramatic change overnight. You need steady improvement over time. 1% better each day may seem insignificant, but over years it transforms everything. Leadership thinking understands the power of compounding. Skills compound, knowledge compounds, investments compound, even character compounds. The patience you practice today strengthens the resilience you will need tomorrow. And there is another dimension to long-term thinking. Leaders do not only think about their own success. They think about legacy. They think about the impact they will leave behind. They think about the people they are influencing. A worker may ask, "How does this affect me?" A leader asks, "How does this affect the team, the organization, the future?" That perspective elevates your decisions. It stretches your vision beyond personal gain. It turns your work into contribution. When you think long-term, you also become calmer. Short-term thinkers panic at every obstacle. A bad week feels like a disaster. A setback feels like defeat. But leaders understand that one chapter does not define the whole story. They see beyond the storm. They know that growth often requires challenge, that pressure produces strength, that temporary difficulty can produce permanent maturity. If you want to lead, you must train your mind to see further than others see, to endure longer than others endure, to believe longer than others believe, because the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Do not let short-term comfort rob you of long-term significance. Do not trade a moment of ease for a lifetime of potential. Lift your vision, expand your horizon. Ask yourself not just what feels good now, but what builds greatness later. In the end, the people who rise are not always the most talented. They are the most consistent, the most disciplined, the most committed to a vision that stretches beyond today. So think beyond the week. Think beyond the paycheck. Think beyond the applause. Build something that will still stand long after the moment has passed.